Welcome, sunflowers. It is Sunday, March the 20th. Happy spring equinox to everyone. The beginning of spring, we hope. The temperatures will be changing and the flowers, well, they're already blooming everywhere. Today, we're going to be talking about the Seven of Cups. After our conversation last week about the Seven of Pentacles, we just luck of the draw have another seven, and so looking forward to that discussion. But before we do get into that, I thought we would share what's been going on here at Good Journeys Tarot, since I normally do that. I did this week actually get a new Amala necklace bracelet, because I had been trying to practice meditation more, and it really helps me to actually repeat something as I'm sitting there, trying not to focus on everything else that's going around me. And so it's actually chakras. So it goes up and then down. So the 108 beads are divided into 14, basically. So fun little item that I got this week. Another thing that I've been working on, I had a conversation on one of the lives about having started a Learning Lenormand deck. And this was not, again, to be printed or anything. This was just me trying to learn the Lenormand. And so normally when I start a new system, I will organize all the information from various sources and kind of try to make sense of the variation in meaning and context and that type of thing into a form that I like, or that works for me, and that is relatable and understandable. And so that usually ends up in a spreadsheet, like is in the back of my planner here. And let's see. Whoops. So there you see the one I created for the runes. And then, whoops, for the runes, there is my Lenormand cheat sheet. And we'll get a closer look at that at another time. But for now, I thought I'd just share the card images real quick, at least some of them. What I did was I wanted cards with the keywords on them, because the words are different than in tarot, and the words are like the most important thing in Lenormand, really, because that picture is not there for intuition as much as it is to say, okay, this is the writer, so this is a message or movement. And then you might combine that with the word next to it, right? Now, there are people who read Lenormand intuitively, but that's not the way that I was taught. So my meanings were combined from various sources. So like I have a book on Lenormand, which I can't remember right now. I have watched Kelly Fitzgerald's videos, and then I've taken a course with Tony Poole. And of course, all of them have slightly different variations of meaning and context. And so I kind of compiled it in something that made sense and worked for me. And then created these cards from Creative Commons imagery, similar to how I'm doing my tarot deck, so that I could actually study it. And so the borders I actually use to represent the positive, negative, or neutral aspect of the card. So in this case, the writer could be neutral or positive. And then I have the keywords on it, as well as the card notation. And I did this for all of the cards. And so you'll see the borders are different depending on their negative or positive context. I originally completed the deck, and I left it in the other room. And so, but I had printed it on my printer, and it really wasn't shuffleable or workable. And so Tarot Stash had said, okay, you know what to do about that. And so I went and I have resized all the imagery for Make Playing Cards. And so I'll be uploading all of those images to Make Playing Cards this week, and getting that printed on actual cardstock so I can play with it and work with it. And I did find 2 errors between the time I printed my deck and I created the larger images. So that was good, a good chance to actually edit things and put them into perspective. And so we'll look for that in 4 to 6 weeks, however long it takes to make playing cards this particular time. And I'll do a walkthrough of that for everyone. Let's take a look and see who is here with us. Tarot Stash is there. Surprise, everyone. Tarot Stash is actually here today to chat about the cards.
Hello.
Welcome. Hi.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for letting me go. Hey, do you want somebody to join you?
Yes,
So,
anytime. I'd
and
love for people to join me. So everyone,
yes,
feel free, reach out to me and let me know. Pop it in the comments here if it's a card you're excited about, or if you're like Ange and you just want to pick a date and say, I'll do it this date, whatever card it is. You'll
nice.
see Ange on, I believe it's April the 10th.
Excellent.
So
May
yeah,
I
so
share
excited
with
about
you? I actually made my own learning Lenormand.
yeah.
I went through and I just actually I was like my key was is I was going to write 2 words down that
Uh-huh.
meant that. So it's a good exercise. So
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful. So today we are talking about the Seven of Cups. I thought it was very interesting that this came up right after the Seven of Pentacles since I've been randomly drawing them.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those of you who need it for reference, there is our card, the 7 of
Mm-hmm.
Cups. An interesting thing about these cups, which I'm going to go ahead and get into real quick before we look at other decks, is that there isn't really agreement about what those 7 symbols represent among various tarot readers and various books. In Tarot Diva, Sasha Graham mentions 2 possibilities, which is unusual. Usually people will take a stance and they'll like stick to one thing. And a lot of times we hear these related to the 7 deadly sins, which we'll talk about later on. Another idea that she pointed out is that these symbols correspond to 7 of the major arcana cards.
Mm-hmm.
And things which might be meaningful in our lives or brought into our lives that we're dreaming about. The third thing, which was in the Secrets of the Waite Smith Tarot by Tally Goodwin and Marcus Katz, is that these symbols could represent the stages of alchemy.
Oh.
And of
Mm-hmm.
course, that's something speculative on their part because, it's not mentioned in the pictorial key. I will say that this book has some really great insights on some of the cards and some of the things that possibly were going through Waite and Pixie's minds as they created the cards. However, it's terribly inconsistent. I mean, there are some cards where there's about this much information, which was pulled directly from the
Yeah.
pictorial key. And then there's some
Mm-hmm.
cards where there are like 10 pages. Which I find is a problem with a lot of tarot books, is the amount of information per card. And so those are all possibilities. And so you'll see different symbols in different decks. You'll also see different approaches in different decks. And I'll talk a little bit about later about why that might be. I
Mm-hmm.
actually have some of the more interesting, unique, or favorite cards with me. Did you pull some cards too?
I did, but one of the things that I learned about this is the Robin Wood, of
Mm-hmm.
course. And one of the things that I learned about this is the things in the cups are actually things that you see in other cards. So, but yeah.
And that's actually similar to that concept of these representing the
Mm-hmm.
7 major arcana cards and pulling off of their meaning and their imagery. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was trying to find some things that we might not typically see.
Right.
And because this is from the Deviant Moon. This is the paradoxical edition. And That is the 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. But there's definitely a creative aspect of that where we see we see the artist trying to create. So it's interesting, making so sort of like a self-portrait here as well, but then somebody else is holding the the canvas. So I found that interesting. So
Interesting. Yeah, I have several that are 7 cups with symbols. The symbols vary a little bit in them, but this is the Fyodor Pavlov, which is always a gorgeous deck.
hmm
And that he actually focused on the skull. Something that I often overlook in this card is that in the RWS, there's actually a skull on the one with the wreath in it. And
okay.
and so that idea that it may not necessarily be a good thing. Here is the Lost Hollow, also again 7 cuts, but kind of pouring everything out into the mouth of the person. And this card in
Oh.
Thoth called debauch, meaning too much.
Mm,
And that's kind of the feeling we get from some imagery of this card is that there's just too much, and we
yeah.
can't decide. We're indecisive.
Yeah. And this is from the Vision Quest Tarot. So there's that the cups that are the 7 of water excess. So we have them cracked. So I hadn't seen it cracked before. I found that interesting. And
This one is the Javel Moir, and the 7 cups are basically the same as in the RWS, but you get this image of the god, and I don't know which god it is in this particular deck. I know it's got to be a Norse god. Um, from what I know about this deck, presenting those cups, and which is a concept I'd like to get talk about in a little while when we talk about the astrological correspondences. But none of the rest
and
of these cards actually use exactly that premise of 7 cups with 7 different symbols.
mm,
They are all different in the way they do things in some way.
mm,
Like this is, of course, the Hip Chick Tarot, which is kind of they call this suit the suit of feels, and there's hearts instead of cups and everything. I mean, of course,
uh-huh.
she chose different types of imagery. You've got a
hmm
cake and a ring and a baby and the unknown and a paradise,
Right.
I guess is what that tree is, rather than the
Uh-huh.
symbols we saw in the other cards.
hmm Yeah, I was just looking through some of mine, trying to find a bit of a different approach. And 7 of Cups in the Voyager Tarot is called Fear. So we have it's like treasure underneath and different cups having been turned over. So I
Hmm.
think with the 7s I always think of as, luck, but also trials and being tested. So the fear of losing all of this stuff that we like. So
And the Numinous Tarot actually uses vials, but it's the same principle.
mm,
There's 7 vials, and they have different options on them. And she's kind of looking in the apothecary window, trying to decide. And in the modern love, that the difference here being that her friends are all offering her a different cup.
oh, that's interesting. You do have
And
other people
I guess
involved.
in
Yeah.
that temptation aspect of the card that we get sometimes,
hmm
which thing do you really want?
Yeah. Here's the lovely day, forthcoming, and so we actually have the person out and about, wandering, looking up, and the 7 of Cups are the tulips, but then we also have these things ahead above, these butterflies, which could be very distracting. So um, it's a pretty card. So, but yeah. So, ooh.
It reminds me a little bit of something that I did. This card actually brings to mind the idea of addiction, which is something that sometimes comes across with this card in certain
Mm-hmm.
studies and in certain cards. But here is this guy imagining himself being celebrated by all of his friends, his drinking buddies. He's the best beer drinker. And
Oh.
this is the Goblin Tarot.
Oh, okay.
Um, This card actually doesn't use the 7 cups or the
Oh.
idea of cups at all, and it's because it's based on artwork, not based on imagery. It's the Edvard Munch Tarot for Relationships, the 7
Mm-hmm.
of Cups, which is called Fantasy, and it's a man with a mermaid there,
Oh.
and, I kinda like that. It's a nice, way to, depict that idea of fantasy versus reality that I see in so many cards in with the 7 of Cups that go.
Yeah. And from the Zany Tarot, the first anniversary, they're not cups, but it's a bubble above the head. And what's interesting is the genie watching, overseeing that. So, and so I find that interesting. And then I also have and then the Zany Spirit, which looks like, which has no cups, but a mermaid. So all of these things are floating around. So definitely options and things to cause distraction, I think, are really prevalent in them.
Yeah, and the first one that you just showed, I think it was the first anniversary.
Uh-huh.
That one reminds me a bit of Venus and Scorpio. There's this idea of Venus is offering us all these possibilities, which is
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the genie there representing Venus.
Okay.
And then all of the emotions and desires coming out of Scorpio in our mind, what are
Oh,
these possibilities and which one am I going to take? And, you know, that type of thing. I like
I
that.
can definitely see that. Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that comes up for this card sometimes is being superficial, desiring all of the things that we don't have. And
Mm.
that's actually the approach that the Bonestone and Earthflesh took with the card.
Uh-huh.
There's a vendor here with all of these nice little gold trinkets and shiny things to offer.
Oh,
Um, and of course, that's kind of specific. So there's a lot of other depth of meaning of this card, I think, that's kind of missed when you focus on a specific aspect that way.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. And I have the Animal Wise Tarot by Ted Andrews, and it's the 7 of Shapeshifters. So we have water and cups, and it's necessary decisions for goals, which I find a refreshing approach to it. It's like, and as you're dreaming big, you have to make the decisions that support you getting that. So, and then the Tarot de Saint Croix. What I like about this is these are tea leaves at the bottom of the deck. So I think of the 7 of Cups a bit as an altered state, and sometimes divination can put us into that altered state, and we might see many options. So, but yeah.
it's interesting that you said altered state because Waite said about this card that this was lucid. This could be lucid dreaming, or this could
Mm-hmm.
be a fairy state, like we're being influenced by the fae.
Right.
Yeah. The last card that I actually had was this one, which is the Mystic Garbage, which kind of hints at that idea of debauch, biting off more than we can chew.
Mm-hmm.
We want it all, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course we want it all. Don't deny me all. So
So thank you for being here, Laura in Florida. And she says that one of her favorites is the Mara Loon Tarot.
Mm,
There's a cat popping out of one cup. and
aw,
that made her decide on the deck. I know it's
I
little
love
things like
that.
that in decks sometimes that just stick out to you. You see it and you're like, oh yeah,
Oh,
I've
of
got to
course.
have this now.
Of course. Yeah. Um, yeah, I've got the Druidcraft and the Wildwood, but I don't think they're a whole lot different than what you were having. But I did the Line Strider tarot, this deck here, the Line Strider tarot. Um, this is an interesting image. I had not seen anything like this before, which is why I wanted to pull it out. It's very um it definitely looks like an altered state, but if you look above here, it's like um there's perhaps pieces of glass or something like that. So it's a visually it's an intriguing deck, which would go to that idea of it being a fantasy or perhaps in our head, maybe a euphoria approach to it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I always enjoy doing this with you because you have completely different decks than I do. I literally have none of the decks that you've shown today. So
Oh, well, and I know you have one which is and I pulled it out, the Life is Like a Board Game.
I do.
And I just so appreciate Confusing Illusions Place. And I'm like going, yep, that can certainly sum it up. I think that's sometimes you just need that little refreshing blunt approach. Here's the
Right.
abridged version.
Right.
So
Yeah, I never
yeah.
think to take that one out because, when I think about it, I'm like, well, it's just keywords. There's no imagery. And so but it does have some really cool titles. I'm going to have to start looking at it, um, you know, spend some more time with it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and look at it. So one of the things that I noticed, not only does Smith and Crowley see this card slightly differently, but the Tarot de Marseille interprets it differently as well. In the Tarot de
Mm-hmm.
Marseille, upright, it's like a lucky break. Like
Right.
you have lots of options kind of
Hmm.
thing. Whereas with the downside being, um, it's a selfish indulgent or an addiction. And
Right.
so it's almost like the TDM is the reverse of the Golden Dawn.
Hmm.
um, and I found a lot of almost seemingly contradictory information as I read through different books about the card, because a
Hmm.
lot of them want to focus on it as this is, you're being offered choices and opportunities, and you just need to make that choice. And then others, of course, taking that more thought approach of, you know, this is too much, this is debauchery, this is seven deadly sins, this is, um, excess kind of approach.
Right.
Um,
And yeah, because I see sevens as, there's some luck about them, but then there's also trials and tribulations. It's things that we're being tested on. When I'm given that many options, do I have the ability, Rosemary, to focus on that one thing, or do I get caught up in illusion and that euphoria of shopping for the perfect thing, you know? So,
Well, the way I ended up looking at it is because I see sevens as like reflection and assessment,
oh,
that kind of
uh-huh.
pause in the journey. Because, after the six, which is kind of harmonious and victorious in a sense, you get the sevens, which adds a little bit more. And you're like, well, wait, I'm starting to succeed. Where's this going? How big will it be? And then in the eight, you take your next action, which gets you to the success of nine and then the
Sure.
continuity of the 10. And
Hmm.
so for me in the seven, all of these, you're kind of assessing the situation and trying to make a choice of some kind, to move forward. And so when I wrote up my keywords, I ended up taking all of these ideas from all of these different books and divided them into two categories. One being before you made a decision, and then one after you've made the decision.
Uh-huh.
And so it ends up being like this card being fantasy and illusion and possibly wishful thinking, imagination, indecision, um,
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty, daydreaming,
Mm-hmm.
delusion, possibly temptation or enticement, even reflection a bit. But then when you reverse it, when you're looking at that other side of it, to me, that's when you have made your clear choice. That's when you've
Mm-hmm.
acting on your dream. That's when you um, are determined, you have purpose. That's when you're made your decision. And so
Right.
that's kind of how I began to see it after I looked at all of these things.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
The and two of the things that I've begun looking at when I get confused about a card is I will look at the Golden Dawn's name for the card, and then
Mm-hmm.
the astrological correspondences, and then their placement on the Tree of Life in Kabbalah. And
Oh,
so
okay.
the Golden Dawn's name for it is Lord of Illusionary Success. So we're not, this isn't actually reality yet. This is actually the possibilities or the illusions of what we think may happen,
Right.
or that are being presented to us, which is where that Venus and Scorpio energy comes in. Venus being the nurturer, the giver, providing us these possibilities, and
Uh-huh.
Scorpio placing our emotions on them, like trying to wrap all of our feelings around these things and decide, okay, which one's going to make us happy and which one's going to be to our detriment, that type of thing. Um, and then, of course, this is actually, and that kind of corresponds with its place on the Tree of Life as well. This is victory in the world of creation. And so this is like
Mm,
when we what effort we put in, what is it that's going to be produced next, right? And so
right.
we're having to make that choice here. We're having to reflect on all the possibilities and decide, okay, which one is going to be the best option. When we
Right.
make the decision and we move forward, what is it that we are going to produce
Right.
in the world of the earth, which would be the next world,
Right.
or in that next Sephira, which would be eight, right? So,
Well, and because all great inventions come from an idea. So we have, thinking about, are you familiar with Star Trek, the original Star Trek?
oh, not at all.
Okay, well,
No, I'm
but
kidding.
if you, yeah, I know. But if you think about that, the communicators, hello, remember the flip phones? Things that have come, things somebody thought of, they had this euphoric experience, astral plane or whatever, and then they manifested it into reality, which is what happens in the eights
Right.
and the
Yeah.
nines.
It's funny you mentioned Star Trek because lately, Star Trek has been amazing. Picard this season is so phenomenal, and
Mm,
um, and Discovery this week featured hopefully my next governor in their episode. So I'm very excited about that. It was great.
cool.
So glad to have Tony here. Tony's asking what a flip phone is. Tony must be very young.
Tony is very young and very innocent, and search it on the interwebs. You can probably find some, you know.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
geez, gosh. And aren't there? Isn't there somebody a mobile that where they're coming up with a phone that folds or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not
So
sure. I hadn't heard about that.
yeah. Anyhow,
Interesting. Yeah. So, let's see. I think so. Basically, there are a couple of other things I wanted to mention that came up, like the sevens being that waiting game, like
mm,
pausing to make a decision, like I talked about in
right.
the Seven of Pentacles as well. This is basically we have questions here, not answers necessarily.
And
In the upright,
possibilities, and
right? Right.
possibilities. Yeah.
Thing to consider would be, you know, everything, if it looks too good to be true, then it probably is, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's the promises of possibilities. It's not necessarily all the
Hmm.
things that are going to happen. Oh, that's funny. Tony's like, "Are you talking about Motorola from like 1994?" Yes, I had that phone. That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my gosh.
awesome. So my coloring, when I colored it, and I'm just going to pop you off
Yes.
real for a second. I actually was intentional about how I colored these. I tried to color them corresponding with my feeling of the tarot card they might be associated with. So this bust is often associated with the Empress or Venus. So I did her kind of a green color. And then this one with the veil is often associated with the High Priestess. So I did it blue. And then the snake is often associated with the Magician, i.e., his belt. And so I made it orange and so forth. So the dragon be associated with the sun, this one being associated with the world, this one being associated with the wheel, and then this one with the tower, obviously because it's the tower. But then these also have been related to the seven deadly sins at different times, and I couldn't begin to tell you which one's which of the seven deadly sins. In some decks, they actually changed the imagery to represent the seven deadly sins. I
Hmm.
forgot to take it out, but the SKT does that. That she pulled out. She pulled seven animals that are associated with the seven deadly sins
Oh,
and put
okay.
them in the cups. So like
Hmm.
the pig for gluttony, and things like that.
Hmm.
So let me stop that share. Sorry. Okay. Switch over to my version of the card and we can look at it and chat about it a little
Yeah.
bit. Let's see. So window, here we go. Okay. So what I ended up doing, it when I first started working on it, I was like, "Oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this." I had initially a figure with like stars coming up that I thought was really cool, and I was going to put
Hmm.
things in the stars, and I was like, it looks too much like every other card, and then
Right.
it wasn't really personally relatable, and then I was going to sleep Thursday night and I had this brainstorm. I'm like, huh, it's almost like a menu,
Uh-huh. That's brilliant. I love
possibilities.
that. Yeah.
And so I put together a menu in a bar it just seemed appropriate because this is sometimes associated with addiction. Um, and I drew out the background from my other cup cards, as well as that bar may look familiar because it did appear in our
Hmm.
three of cups. And and so but I kind of like the idea of it being associated with the seven deadly sins, as well as the association with the various um major arcana cards. And
Uh-huh.
so what
Yes.
I did was I named all of the drinks after the seven deadly sins on our little
Right.
menu.
Hmm.
And then I put symbols for each of the cards on our vessels. So, like each of those glasses and those bottles um, have a symbol that corresponds to one of those cards.
Hmm.
And I thought this was a interesting way to look at this because it does represent the possibilities. They're not really real. It could potentially be anything. Um,
Hmm.
and yet it kind of related to my life. Like, I have a hard time making choices a lot of times when I
Hmm.
go places
Yeah.
because I'm not one of those people who is picky about what they eat or drink. I'll try anything one time, you know.
Okay.
And so when I look at the menu, I'm like, oh, it all looks good,
It's
and
so good. There's so many choices. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, and so that's kind of how I was looking at it. I
Hmm.
wasn't sure though that I liked this coloring. Oh, wrong thing. Where am I at? There we go. because the iron begins to kind of blend in with these stools. And so I did play with the color a little bit. I tried adding more blue because this is a cup card. And then I thought perhaps adding green to bring in that Venus energy to go with the blue background. I'm not sure I'm completely settled on this yet, one way or the other, though I did post the green one as my final card this week when I posted. And I may even tweak the names of some of those cards, some of those
Right.
drinks, that
Right.
kind of thing. And of course, if I get feedback that this just doesn't work from anyone, then I may revisit the whole thing, right?
Well, I like the idea of a menu, to be honest with you, especially at a bar where I've been to bars, and when you get a little intoxicated, things look different than reality, and bad choices or great choices are made. Um, I wonder if the different colors, which one would go better with the rest of the deck.
Right. Yes. I guess that would
So
be something
that's
to look
the
at.
artistic choice.
Yeah, let's do this real quick since we're chatting about it. I'm going to take this one off since for the moment, and I am going to go back to. Oh, sorry. I'll have to stop sharing and go back to here and share a different screen. Here we go. We're going to go to here, and then we're going to share, and we're going to choose a window, and it is going to be. Oh, darn it.
Laura in Florida said, I love this menu. And Tony, Antoinette, Intuitive Tarot and Jewelry said, what about a pinky gray for the silhouette?
A pink gray. Okay. I did try a gray and I didn't like it. So these are all of the cards. And let's see if I can scroll over. Oh, come on. Scroll over to these. So these are the cards. Let's see what they look like with some of the others. So there's our Fool. Here's some of our cup cards. Let's take the Fool out.
What about changing the stool to a different color?
I did toy with that. One of the problems is I have to change the color of the silhouette first so that my colors don't blend in because of the way I'm doing the editing. But I did play with it. I didn't really care for it. But that is still definitely a possibility. I am using mostly black silhouettes, though in some cards I did use different colors. Let's see here. Come on. Oh, come on. It's not doing it. There we go. I used blue and pink in this Four of Wands, in the World card, and in the Hierophant. I used purple.
Right.
And then I used gray in a few of them, like the High Priestess. And so there is that precedent for using different colors. But I don't know if this is one where I really wanted this to stick out. I think I may want to just really go back and focus hard on getting the stools to look right in a different color. But my first attempt didn't go well. I think I just need to spend more time on the editing process than I typically do.
Right. Because you're having a 7 of Cups moment with it, right? There's so many good options that you have. Oh, here. It's a 7 of Cups moment. So
Tony says the blue and green seem kind of bright and that I should use the black. And you're probably right. This isn't a particular card where I want things to be bright and happy, which is kind of what I was going for with the Four of Wands and the card that is now called the Chaplain rather than the Hierophant, because people tend to have a negative reaction to that card 5. mostly because of its association historically with Pope or the
Yeah,
Christian
right.
imagery. And so I wanted to
Mhm.
make it a little happier and brighter.
Sure.
Um, and then the reason that I used gray in the High Priestess was because I felt like it wanted a neutral there in the middle,
Yeah.
as part of that whole triplicity idea that I keep promoting in tarot
Mhm.
of late. Um, and that article will be in the Cartomancer in June, so look for
It
that. If you're not
Ooh,
subscribed, subscribe to the Cartomancer. There is an electronic version as well as a print version. So look
nice.
for that. Pepper Jackie has just popped in. Wandering Mountain Bardic Path is here.
Hi, Jamie. Hi, Pepper.
Welcome, everyone. We are just wrapping up. I showed my card. We were contemplating the colors and compared it to some of the others in the deck. And now it is time to reveal next week's card, where any one of you
Ooh.
watching right now could be my guest. Today, Gerald was a surprise guest, so I didn't really promote that. But, if we know ahead of time, I will promote the heck out of you being on my channel. Good
Do it.
Journeys
Do it.
Tarot.
Do it. Do it. Do it.
And you can reach me through my link tree. You also can give comments throughout the week on the card
Mhm.
in my group, Good Journeys into Tarot. On Fridays, I usually post my first draft and look for thoughts from people on the
Mhm.
cards before we come into Sunday. And so you're always welcome. Gerald is very generous with his comments. He's wholly responsible for the outcome of the devil. Um,
Oh.
and
Oh, are you
so
calling
I
me the
give
devil? I'll take that.
full
I'll take
credit
that.
for that card. All right. So I am going to shuffle and we're going to draw our card for next week.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, what's it gonna
All
be?
right.
How many cards do you have left? How many? I mean, you're doing 78 cards in 78 weeks ish. So,
Well,
I mean,
I'm not counting my vacations, you know.
no, I'm not either. So, I mean, how far are you?
Let's see.
Let's,
We're at what, 28?
very
29?
nice.
28 or
Congratulations.
29. Yeah. So we're
Yeah.
we're on target to finish next March, early
Mhm.
March, late February. And then I'll spend a few
Beautiful.
months tweaking the deck and
Uh,
getting everything the way I wanted. All right, let's cut our cards.
what's it gonna be? Maybe it may
So we
sometime.
have the Nine of Wands.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so this should be an interesting card to do. I really will probably have to think about that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always like this card has always made sense to me when I look at it, as far as like it being about perseverance, that stamina to keep going, even though you've been through the ringer already,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of hold your ground.
Right.
Um, in that kind of passive way versus the seven, which is a very active standing your ground. I always see this as a more passive standing your ground and
Mm-hmm.
perseverance kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I have no idea what scene from my life I might use for this. We'll have
Yeah.
to. I'll have to work on that over the next week. And if anybody wants to join me, please do feel free. Tony says that they are going to be busy for the next few weeks, maybe in May. So,
Nice.
but do catch the broadcast. It will be on YouTube, available going forward under the hashtag 78 cards in 78 weeks. You'll see all of them and can watch them at any time if you want to learn a little bit about the cards or you just enjoy my smiling face.
Yeah, and you can, hide my face. So, but I think one of the things people, the benefit that I have from it, Rosemary, is you do an incredible amount of research. So if somebody is wanting to learn tarot, this is a good opportunity for them to understand the different approaches because you're doing Thoth, RWS, And you're incorporating astrology, Tree of Life, Kabbalah. So it's a beautiful blend.
Well, thank you.
So,
This was my goal for a long time now, was to actually study each card in depthly
mhm,
and come up with, just like I did with the Lenormand, what I think about it and how I feel
right,
about it, and put it all together in an image so that I had something personal for me. So this is always about
right.
creating something for me. And that's why it's kind of an autobiographical deck as I'm working through it.
That's beautiful.
Ultimate goal is still to find an illustrator to do it justice. But I'm comfortable printing and working with this Creative Commons imagery for myself. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of liking how these silhouettes are working for me too.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. That's beautiful.
yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Tara Stash Gerald. It was great
You're
seeing
welcome.
you and chatting with you again. And
Yes.
we will probably see him again in the next year, because there are lots of weeks to fill. Hopefully, some of you will be doing that. Until next time, everyone, good journeys.